Today on the show, are identity politics already dominating the 2020 election? Seems like they might be, and we're a ways off yet.
Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
You know, I have to tell you, I feel very lucky with regard to the way I was raised. If there's one thing my parents did and did well, it was raise me without any kind of prejudice. My parents grew up in a different era, and my parents, I guess, reacted very strongly against the idea of prejudice, whether it be racial or sexual or anything that was discriminatory wasn't part of my parents' vocabulary. But they did this. They raised me without prejudice in a very effective way. Meaning, they didn't raise me going, prejudice is bad. Prejudice is awful. No one's better than anybody else because of the color of their skin. Don't forget that. They just led by example, I suppose, in that they never treated anybody differently. And I suppose a big part of what made that easy was the fact that we were foreigners in a foreign country. My family moved to England when I was a kid, which is not, that different and exotic from America. But nevertheless, you're not native. And then there was the fact that I went to an international school. There were kids from all over the world. All sizes, shapes, colors, and creeds were represented in every one of my classes. So the idea of having a problem with any of those people that you grow up with when you're young and don't have any prejudices that you've picked up along the way, that was pretty easy too. But my parents had this ability, I think, to treat everyone as a person, take them at face value. There are plenty of people who were jerks that they talk smack about. But none of this ever stemmed to anything cultural or societal, or in any way, shape, or form having to do with the color of their skin, their station in life, who they are, what they did, where they're from, any of that. My parents took people at face value and led by that particular example. And I'll never forget encountering racism, personally, for the very first time. And this is how long I went without encountering racism. I was, I think, in the 10th grade. And I went to America, and I was hanging out with some friends, and they were going to have a party. They were going to have an old-fashioned high school kegger. I was excited to experience this. I'd seen movies about this. Growing up in England, we didn't really have that sort of thing because, drinking age in England is 18. It's not all that rigidly enforced. So the idea of, illegally purchasing beer and then charging people to get into your party so that they can have a little red cup of it was sort of a foreign thing. But I'd seen it in movies, and I thought the whole thing seemed crazy, nuts, like a hoot, like an experience. And I was excited to experience this. We're having a kegger. It's going to be awesome, and you're going to love it. I was like, oh, sweet. Do we not have to get beer? And they're like, yeah. We're going to go over to N-word town to get it. I was like, what? N-word town? What? Huh? And just like that, having heard something racist said, without humor, without irony, something that was just straight up racist. For the first time in my life, I was like, I don't think I can make it to the party after all. I'm going to have to go literally anywhere else. You people don't seem like my kind of people. My point being, it took me until the 10th grade to encounter racism in the real world. I mean, I knew it existed, but maybe I was fortunate. Maybe I grew up in a bubble. I had parents that were in no way, shape, or form prejudiced against anyone. And I went to school with a bunch of different kids that were from a bunch of different places, that looked a bunch of different ways, had a bunch of different colors of skin. So it took me, like I said, till I was about 15, 16 years old to ever encounter racism up close and personal. And I was upset. I was shocked. I was offended. And I was disappointed in us as a species. I was like, I really didn't think this sort of thing happened anymore. And I remember talking to a black friend of mine about it. I was like, it's disgusting. Did you know in some parts of the world there's racists? And he was like, yeah, I'm black. I get it every day. I was like, really? Like, in the 90s, this happens to you? He was like, oh, yeah, you are aware of what happened to Rodney King, aren't you? And I was like, yeah, but that's, that's a whole world away in Los Angeles. And it was, he's like, dude, racism exists. And I'll never forget having this long conversation with him about it. And I was like, well, how bad is it? And my friend, who is black, had a great way of putting it. He's like, here's the thing. If you are white, it's a lot worse than you realize. If you're black, it's probably not as bad as you think. I was like, no kidding. Huh. Interesting. And I realized, and it was kind of a disappointing thing because my parents had raised me to believe that there were no differences between people because of color of skin. And I believe that there were no differences between people because of color of skin or any of the things that divide us in these situations. But then I realized there were. Not in my mind, but in the experience of life. In the way that my friend went through the world. In terms of him walking around, existing. He experienced prejudice and racism in a way that I would never understand and never know. And I thought that was horrible. And I was disappointed. But as much as, sadly, in the year 2018, even though this was supposed to be Abraham Lincoln's problem, differences like gender and color of skin change the way someone experiences life when they go through the world. As much as that is a problem, I don't like the conversations that are being had about the elections in 2020. What are we talking about? How does this all tie in? We'll get into it next.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So growing up in England, like I said, I didn't encounter racism out in the wild. Didn't encounter it in person until I came to America. I was in the 10th grade, and, well, I told you the story, but I was supposed to go have a kegger party thing happen with some guys I was hanging out with. They said something racist, and I was like, oh my God, that happens? That exists? I was very fortunate. I was raised around a bunch of people that were from all over the world. I was surrounded by people that looked, talked, acted differently from me, and came from a different part of the world. And that was, I guess, a great way to grow up because I was raised without prejudice. It was pretty cool. My parents weren't prejudiced. I was fortunate. I lived in a prejudice-free bubble until I hit the 10th grade and I saw that happen. I mean, obviously I knew racism existed, but I'd never seen it in action until that moment. And I was disgusted, and I was confused, and I was afraid for the state of the world. And I talked to my friend. I was like, did you know this happens? I was in America and this happened. And he was like, yeah, this happens every single day. And it's not just limited to America. It happens in England as well, where we are. How about that? And then he went on to tell me that, well, there is a different type of racism that exists in England than America. I was like, is there really? He was like, well, here's the thing you have to understand about people in England that are black. He was like, we are predominantly from a different part of the world. We were not brought to England as slaves from Africa. The vast majority of the black population in England came from the West Indies and did so voluntarily. He was like, so there's a whole world of hatred and ugliness and brutality and unspeakable human atrocity that happened in the history of America that wasn't part of England. We had other brutality and atrocity and all that sort of stuff. And he made a very succinct point. In England, there existed, and still exists, some would say, class warfare. And he was like, yeah, the white people in England were too busy hating each other. It was a divide of rich and poor. It wasn't a divide of color of skin. He's like, white people in England were too busy being mad at each other. So that occupied most of their prejudice and negativity. And he said, racism in England is a little more laid back. My friend Greg, he grew up back and forth between England and America. And he was like, yeah, there is racism in England. I experience it all the time. It's no fun. It sucks. But this is the difference between racism in England and America. A point that was succinctly illustrated by the brilliant, and I do mean brilliant, Gina Yashir.
Did you know there were black people in England? Did you know? We are everywhere. I know, from London, England, born and raised. Obviously, black people are not indigenous to England. My mum came from Nigeria, West Africa. No, don't cheer that. She went from Nigeria to England. My mum had the pick of the globe. She could have gone anywhere in the world. Imagine my mum in Nigeria with all her maps spread out before her. Where shall I go? Where shall I go? You know what? I am fed up with the sunshine. I want to go somewhere with a lot of drizzle and subtle racism. That's what I want, subtle. Because I don't know if you know this, Americans, but the Brits are the best at racism. They're so good, you don't even know you're being discriminated against. They are ninja racists.
Subtle ninja racism. What I was raised with in England, which is maybe why I didn't notice it. Why I didn't see it until I came to America in the 10th grade. But yeah, that adequately sums up my friend Greg's description of what it was like being black growing up in England. So like I said, I was raised without any kind of prejudice. I abhor any kind of prejudice. It disgusts me. It upsets me. Makes me mad that we as a species are so weak to the point where we haven't evolved to where the color of a person's skin, their accent, where they come from, matters in any way, shape, or form. Which is why, I suppose, I didn't like this when I heard it. Didn't like this talk of the way the 2020 election is most likely going to go. I don't care who you are, what you do, where you come from, color of your skin, all that stuff that you and I have been discussing. I care about your ability to get the job done as a leader, as a politician. I care about your intentions. Do you genuinely want to serve the public? Do you want to be a public servant? Are you going to be cognizant of the fact that our tax dollars pay your freaking salary? And you know what? That's why this, to me, was uncomfortable to hear. I want the Democrats to have the best candidate possible. I want them to have someone with unbeseechable integrity. If it's not Donald Trump, I want the Republicans to have the best candidate possible. Doesn't matter which side they come from. I don't really buy into the concept of Democrat or Republican. But one side is going to come up with the leader of the free world next time out. And I really, really hope that no matter who it is, no matter what side they're on, they're a good one. And they do what is right by the people of America in a difficult time. I don't think this is the kind of talk that's going to get us there. I don't know if you saw this or not, but Kirsten Gillibrand, who is probably running for president in 2020, said she's worried that the latest polls show that 3 white men, Biden, Sanders, and Beto, are leading the Democratic field. She was with Van Jones and she was asked, I did notice that in a poll that the top 3 were, I think, Biden, Bernie, and Beto. 3 Bs, all white guys. In a party as diverse as a Democratic Party, does it worry you to see the top 3 being white guys? And she responded, yes. Adding that, I aspire for our country to recognize the beauty of our diversity at some point in the future. And I hope someday we have a woman president. She also did some pandering that to me verged on racist. Because she was talking to Van Jones and she said, I love the fact that Barack Obama was our president. I love the fact that Barack Obama was our president for 8 years. I hope more people of color not only aspire and win the presidency, because that's what makes America so extraordinary, that we are all of that. We are everything. And I think a more inclusive America is a stronger America. You'll get no argument from me on that. We are a lot of different people with a lot of different experiences, with a lot of different backgrounds. And every last one of us, regardless of those experiences, those backgrounds, the color of our skin, our ethnicity, every last one of us should have the ability to go all the way and become president. Is it wrong that this hasn't happened already? Yeah, it's embarrassing for us as a society and a species that any kind of prejudice or racism exists. It shows how weak and fearful we are as a society and as a species that any kind of racism or prejudice is allowed to exist. It all comes from fear, and we don't have the cojones to get over it and stomp it out. But the idea that the 2020 election could be approached with a, I don't know, they're a white male. We don't know how we feel about that. Judging people by their gender and the color of their skin does us no good whatsoever, regardless of their gender, regardless of the color of that skin.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radio Land. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on.
So, if there's one thing Hillary Clinton understands, if there's one thing she knows and she knows well, if there's one thing that Hillary Clinton is intimately acquainted with, it's losing presidential elections. And now she's putting that experience to excellent use. Do you see, Hillary Clinton sent a note to comfort an 8-year-old girl. There's this 8-year-old girl named Martha Kennedy Morales, who lost her election for class president to a male classmate. Now, unlike Hillary, Martha did not win the popular vote. But it was close. She only lost by the 1 vote. Do you remember class elections? Do you remember this? I remember this. And this is where I think I built up my early cynicism toward politicians, because we had this one kid that came in when we were in the 5th grade, and there were all these other candidates I don't even remember. But this kid was cool. He was kind of good looking. He was older than us because he was running for middle school class president. I think we were in the 5th grade. That was the first year we were technically middle schoolers, and he was probably in the 8th grade. So he was older. He was cooler. And he talked about all these things that we would potentially be looking at if he was elected president. You know, we're going to have 2 desserts in the lunchroom, longer recesses, less homework. It's going to be freaking great. And I remember asking a friend of mine, and looking back on this, it's really an excellent lesson in societal trends and the overwhelming urge to go with the public zeitgeist. And it's shocking how little has changed, I think, in some instances since the time we were in the 5th grade and voting in our first class election. But I remember turning to the kid sitting next to me, and I'm like, who are you going to vote for? And they're like, oh, him, definitely. I was like, yeah, me too. He's cool. And, 2 desserts at lunch, longer recesses, less homework. Yeah, right on. And this guy won class president by a landslide. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Can't wait to get my second dessert. I tried to collect that second dessert not long after he was elected, and the lunch lady looked at me like I was out of my freaking mind. And I waited for the longer recess to come, and I noticed that the homework load increased, if anything. And I was like, what the hell? None of the things this guy promised us are happening. It's almost like he told us he would deliver something he couldn't deliver in exchange for our vote. And I actually, maybe this is where I get it from. I actually saw him. I saw him one day on the playground, and I was like, hey man, what up with our longer recess? What's going on with that second dessert? Why do I have all this homework? What do you intend to do about this? And he was like, what the hell are you talking about? I was like, when you ran for class president, you said all this stuff. He's like, leave me alone, kid. He begged and pandered for my vote, and then didn't want to talk to me when I asked him to hold up his end of the deal, having dutifully pulled the 5th grade lever of democracy so that he could be installed to power. It was a telling experience. And I honestly look at politics exactly the same way now as an adult. I feel as though the vast majority of politicians are not there to serve the public. They're there because their broken ego is causing them in some way, shape, or form to need the attention and feel like if they win this massive national popularity contest, maybe in some way, shape, or form, they'll be repaired. Or they're lazy and they just don't want to have to work for a living, and they realize that by shuffling papers for a certain amount of time between elections, you can just hang on to that gig for a long, long run. Anyways, that was my formative experience, politically speaking, and it happened in a school election. So I don't discount the experience of this kid. Like I said, Hillary Clinton sent a note to comfort an 8-year-old girl. Oh, by the way, I remember we talked about this guy that I voted in for class president a little while ago on the show, and it made me look him up on Facebook. I was like, whatever did happen to that guy? Whatever happened to that dude that we all voted for because he was cool and flashy and good looking? And he seems to have made a career out of being cool and flashy and good looking. He now, I think, is an alcohol salesman that basically supplies clubs in Ibiza with their booze. So the popularity contest is over. He won it. He's living exactly the kind of life that you would expect if he hadn't wound up a politician. Anywho, Hillary Clinton sent a note to comfort this 8-year-old girl named Martha Kennedy Morales, who lost her election for class president to a male classmate. Unlike Hillary, Martha did not win the popular vote, but it was a close race. She only lost by the 1 vote. Among other things, Hillary said, quote, "While I know you may have been disappointed that you did not win president, I'm so proud of you for deciding to run in the first place. The most important thing is that you fought for what you believe in. And that is always worth it. As you continue to learn and grow in the years ahead, never stop standing up for what is right and seeking opportunities to be a leader. And know that I'm cheering you on for a future of great success." It's unclear if Martha was done in by emails too, or if she call their opponents' supporters deplorables, or if the boy was boosted by Vladimir Putin and Russian trolls spreading fake news on Facebook. But there was, as it turns out, a bit of a voting scandal. Yeah. It's infecting the third grade 8-year-old girl voting scandal. You see, apparently, this election that the 8-year-old girl ran in for class president, apparently the first election had to be scrapped after 6 votes were deemed invalid. Now, it's unclear exactly what those results were, but in the second vote, Martha lost by 1. So yeah, they had to have a re-vote. Now, contrary to what you might be thinking, this bungled elementary election did not happen in Florida. Martha is a 3rd grader at a private Quaker school in Maryland. And Martha was interviewed, and she said that she knows who Hillary Clinton is, and she was surprised that she wrote to her. And you know what? She's not beaten. She's down, but she's not out. She would be willing to run for class president again, or even pursue a career in politics. But it's not what she wants to do with her life. She said she wants to be a singer, or she wants to ride horses.
Dear Martha, the most important thing is that you fought for what you believed in, and it is always worth it. While I know you may have been disappointed that you did not win president, I am so proud of you deciding to run in the first place. It's not easy when you stand up and put yourself in contention for a role that's only been sought by boys. Never stop standing up for what's right. Sincerely yours, Hillary Rodham Clinton. There it was, this folded piece of paper. And I was like, what in the world? I remember her pink shirt that she was wearing the night of the election. I've had dreams about wearing that pink shirt. To know that Hillary Clinton is cheering me on for a future of great success, I mean, this is really special.
That kid's only 8 years old? That's insane. She's unbelievably well-spoken. She speaks better than me, and I speak professionally for a living. I mean, yeah. Note the sarcastic air quotes around the word living, but nevertheless, very impressive. And I'm sure she does have a brilliant future in front of her. Maybe, if she ever does throw her hat in the political ring, in the adult world, she'll remember to go to Wisconsin. You know, it just occurred to me. I think another part of the reason why this idea of identity politics, on the left or the right or wherever the hell you find it, seems so ridiculous to me is because, well, growing up in England, the idea of a female in power was not in any way, shape, or form a foreign or alien thing that hadn't been accomplished yet. When I moved to England as a child, Margaret Thatcher was running the country and did for many, many years. And you know, I guess in some ways, I'm sort of fortunate to have grown up in that environment too. Not saying England is perfect, but they don't have the hurdle to overcome of having had a female leader. They had one years and years ago. They have one now. It's a non-issue, as it should be. And it's surprising to me that a young country like America is still hung up on something that the rest of the world, or many parts of the rest of the world, seem to have dealt with an awful long time ago. Hopefully, sooner rather than later, we do have a female president. And we have that female president because, well, she's the best person for the job. Not because she's a female, not because she wants to be the first female president, not because people want to vote for her because she's going to be the first female president, but because she's the best person for the job. And maybe we can start catching up with the rest of the world in this respect. And it can become, as it should be, a non-freaking issue.
AD on the radio.
So before you and I get into our segment, My Witness News, where we take a look at the events of today, let's you and I talk about why you might be regifting a present, shall we?
Tim, you didn't have to get me a thank you gift. I know, it's a label maker.
Oh, is that a label maker?
Yes, it is. I got it as a gift. It's a Label Baby Junior.
You know, those things make great gifts. I just got one of those for Tim Watley for Christmas.
Tim Watley?
Yeah, who sent you that one?
One Tim Watley.
No, my Tim Watley?
The same. He sent it as a thank you for my Super Bowl tickets.
He recycled this gift. He's a regifter.
Didn't he re-gift the label maker?
Possibly.
Well, if he can re-gift, why can't you de-gift?
Well, here, take Watley's label maker. I don't want to see it again.
I just came by to pick up my label maker. You don't have the label maker, do you?
No.
I knew it. You're a regifter.
Yeah, a regifter. Do you regift? I think I used to regift, but that was like mostly for stupid work Christmas presents. Like your boss or whoever the hell it is gets you something that's meaningless. That's a piece of crap out of a sense of duty because, well, they're the boss and that's just what they do. And then you hand them something as well. And they go, oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. And you know you don't want this. Lately, though, I've found that inter-office gifts have tended to have been of the Starbucks gift card variety. And you know, and I always love that. I know it seems uncreative. I know it seems like you didn't put any thought into it. I know it seems like you don't really care. But guess what? I drink Starbucks. I will always drink Starbucks. It's a drug. I'm addicted. I need caffeine to get by. And I always feel stupid about paying the mortgage payment that it costs for a grande latte at Starbucks. But if someone gives me a Starbucks gift card, I will use it and I will appreciate it. It's a gift that keeps on giving, you know, until it's gone. So I think I used to regift a lot of corporate gifts, but a poll of 2,000 people found that 46% of us wish we could just pick out our own Christmas gifts so we get stuff that we actually want. The survey also asked people about stuff they've regifted, returned, or just tossed in the trash and why they did it. And here are the top reasons for regifting. You just didn't like it. You couldn't use it in time. So that applies to things like gift cards and Groupons, I suppose. Groupons are a tough one. Do you ever give those as gifts? I can't bring myself to do it. Like, even for a date or something like that, man, you need to have been in a secure relationship for a long time before you go, oh, I got a Groupon for this. Oh, cool, you did? Sweet, saves us money. You know, junior's college fund. Or this will be good for a vacation. Penny saved is a penny earned and all that sort of stuff. Gifting with a Groupon is something that, look, if you are in an evolved enough place with the people that you're giving your Groupons to where it's cool, that's fine. And you know what? If you gave me a Groupon, I would love it. I would love it. I think that would be really cool, but I just can't bring myself to give those. So yeah, people couldn't use it in time. That's why they regift things. You already owned one. I kind of get that, especially with things like books, you know. I already own this book. I love this book. I'll give it to someone else so someone else can enjoy the book. I sort of get that. You like the gift, but you thought someone else would like it more. You got too many of them. Like if you end up with 5 boxes of chocolate, you regift it to save money on someone else's gift. I got to tell you, there are some people where I feel kind of like obligated to get them a gift. But I don't really feel like I should. I don't care for the societal norm that dictates I have to buy presents for people that I wouldn't buy presents for otherwise just because I work with them. And so if I could save some cash on them, I guess I might regift in that case. Clothing didn't fit, so you give it to somebody else. You use it as an emergency gift after you forgot to get someone a present. That has happened to me before. I don't remember what I regifted, but I get that too. You don't have space for it. Or, finally, the top 10, the 10th reason in the top 10 reasons for regifting. You get rid of it out of spite because you didn't like the person who gave it to you. Yeah, there you go. I don't have to, jerk. I don't want this in my house. Thank you, but no. All right, let's get into the events of today in our segment, My Witness News. We pick up a story we left off a couple days ago. The story of Baby It's Cold Outside. This year's Christmas controversy, I suppose you would call it. This is Baby It's Cold Outside. What are the ones we've had in the past? Oh, remember the Starbucks one? The War on Christmas, because they wouldn't put Merry Christmas on the cup. And there was that guy who went viral because he told the barista at Starbucks that his name was Merry Christmas. And he was like, I tricked you, Starbucks. I made you write Merry Christmas on the cup. What would the holiday season be without a little bit of outrage? Anyways, a radio station in Kentucky has planted its flag in the war over Baby It's Cold Outside. This past Sunday morning just gone by, WAKY 103.5 FM in Elizabethtown played 5 different versions of Baby It's Cold Outside for 2 straight hours. In a message on their Facebook page, they said, quote, "We like it and we're not afraid to play it on WAKY for the next couple of hours." Program director is a guy called Joe Friedel. Considers himself a supporter of the Me Too movement. But he said, quote, "All it is a dialogue between a man and a woman. And at the end of the song, you hear them harmonize together. So they're agreeing, basically." Oh, okay. I mean, here's the thing. It's a great publicity stunt for the radio station. In radio, you don't necessarily know this, but weekends, specifically a Sunday morning, these are not prized listening times. There's a reason they didn't do this in the morning. There's a reason they did in the morning during the week rather, or in afternoon drive during the week. There's a reason why they buried this on a Sunday morning. The stakes are low, unbelievably low. But this idea that they're basically agreeing because you hear them harmonize at the end, maybe a bit of a leaf on this guy's part. On a related note, even Joan Collins, yes, from Dynasty. Remember her? On a related note, even Joan Collins is weighing in on this. She said she's in favor of the song too. She said, quote, "What's going to happen to seduction if we are not allowed to do it anymore? Is someone going to have to ask permission of the parents before they can kiss a girl? It's absolutely becoming out of control. It seems to have happened in the last 2 years, and it seems to be getting worse and worse." I don't know. I grew up that way. This took a dark twist, but I grew up knowing some females very well that had been the victims of horrible sexual assault and abuse. And I saw what it did to them. And so, in my interactions with females, having seen the damage that was done to some of them, some of my favorite females, by sexual assault, I never wanted to be responsible for one iota of that. So for like the longest time in relationships, unless I get waved in by a sexual air traffic controller saying, "This is the runway and you are cleared for takeoff," I'm not going to do anything. I remember early on, I had this girlfriend who was like, "Are you going to go hold my hand?" I was like, "Oh, can I hold your hand?" She was like, "Yeah, but it's weird that you're asking." I was like, "I just want you to be comfortable." And she's like, "Well, just don't ask, just hold. Otherwise it becomes this awkward conversation." I was like, "Sorry, this will always be an awkward conversation for me." Anyways, my point is, I've lived in the world that Joan Collins described for a very long time, my whole life. And I seem to have managed to have gotten by. All right. As it turns out, we're all out of show. That is it for me. Thank you so much for hanging. Thank you for being a part of my radio family. As always, this time that you and I spent together, it's the best part of my day every single day. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll do this all over again. Have an awesome one.